What did you tell me to break a leg or shake a leg? Shake a leg, okay. All right, that I would be willing to do. Okay, here we are, everyone. Welcome to HED Talks. We're in our fourth? Is this our fourth? Yeah, it is. I'm confused because I was on vacation last week. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. All right, so this is our fourth in our great trials in history. And do you know what we're doing today?
The Scopes trial.
Yes, the Scopes trial. It should be called the Scopes trial, but that's not the advertising that it got. Do you know what it was called?
The monkey trial.
Yes, it was called the monkey trial, exactly. That's right, Judy. It was called the monkey trial, and it was quite a sensation in its day. It was a huge deal in its day. I think this is the only trial that we have in the series that didn't happen in Massachusetts, too. All the others happened in Massachusetts. So we're out of our territory. Does anyone know where we are? Tennessee, that's right. Yes, you're all correct. We're in Tennessee. And it isn't just the place. The place has a lot to do with it. But it's also the times that has so much to do with it. The times. And in this particular area, too much, too soon, too fast. What was the year? Does anybody know?
1925.
Yes, exactly. Who said that? Esther, oh my gosh. Are you Googling? No, you just knew that? Okay. So yeah, it was 1925. So in the 1920s, there's an awful lot going on, right? This is a brand new era. It's after what?
World War I.
Yes, it's after World War I. And so we're coming into a new time of science. The Roaring Twenties, exactly. So we have this guy, and he's causing quite a stir, isn't he? What's he saying?
Darwin. Evolution.
Charles Darwin, that's right. That's Charles Darwin. And he is talking, he's saying that mankind, humankind, has a common ancestor with who? Yeah. Yes. Well, what does that do to your self-esteem?
Makes it scratch.
It explains a lot, right, Pat? It explains an awful lot. So to have a common ancestor with a chimpanzee, not only does it defy what's been believed for so many thousands of years, but it kind of puts human beings in the same category as what?
Animals.
Yeah, as animals. And so to have evolved in a way that animals evolved dropped humankind down, dropped us down into a lower level of being. Is that right?
That's right.
And does that kind of fly in the face of being a divinely created being? It does. It does. So not everybody was willing to accept that. The other thing that was contradicting traditional thought was geology, correct?
Yeah.
What were the geologists saying?
It's a lot older than the Bible says it is.
It's a lot older than 6,000 years, right? Those are things that really shook people up, right? Not everybody. Some were ready to hear it and some were not ready to hear it. Who was ready to hear it? Do you know?
The scientists, I'm sure.
The scientists were, yes, that's right. But somebody said, I think it was David, that we're in the Roaring Twenties, right? All right, so if you're in the cities and things are moving fast, you're living in the fast lane in the cities, things are changing, correct? What's happening in the cities?
Party.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, this is after World War I. People are really living it up. They're taking the traditional norms and they're kind of tossing them out the window, right? And they're just loosening up and they're living life. And this kind of lifestyle also opens up an era of something else that becomes really reckless and dangerous. Yeah, so we're in the 20s. We're in the 20s now, and we've got this mob, these gangsters. These things are happening in the city, and what is becoming of women?
Loose.
They're liberated.
Women are getting liberated, and who said loose? Well, isn't that scandalous? That is scandalous.
Let that go.
Right? Yeah, so
Showing their bodies.
I know. Yes. I mean, you can see their ankles and their shins. It's awful. It's terrifying. In their arms, too. Look, they have bare arms. All right, and then, so we've got that in the culture that's going on. And then we've also got greater progression in science. Who has a huge impact on our beliefs in how the universe operates?
Science.
Einstein, he's had time to really prove out his theories. And Albert Einstein, is a sensation, and we have a completely brand new way of looking at the universe and understanding how the universe works. And so this is all, it's too much. It's too much. Think about all the things that were happening right about this time. Yeah, these things are all relatively new, aren't they? And it's all coming fast and furious. It's all coming fast and furious. And people in the cities are more open to it, aren't they? They're ready for this. They want this. They're embracing it. But then there are people in other places that are feeling overwhelmed by this. And one of those places is, yes, Tennessee. So Tennessee is having a little bit of a hard time with all of this. All right, so this idea of too much, too soon, too fast is making them react in a particular way. And what is the way that they're reacting? We need to go back to basics, right? We need to go back to basics. We need to return to the fundamental thoughts. And so they're having a revival. In one of the ways that they decide they're going to get a grasp on tradition is they're going to pass a law. It's called the Butler Act. And it says it shall be unlawful for any teacher in any of the universities or any of the public schools to teach what? Evolution, yes. If any teacher in the state of Tennessee teaches anything other than a divine creator, then they can be punished by law, all right, which means they can be arrested. Here it is. This is actually it. There's page 1. I know you can't read it, but yes. So March 21st, 1925, it becomes law, and the punishment is a fine, and it can be from $100 to $500. All right? All right, so now we're talking about this kind of culture clash, right, of the suburbs and the cities. The cities are more willing to accept these new ideas, whereas the farmers in the country, they're not. They're resisting it. So when the cities find out about this law in Tennessee, how do you think they react? It's threatening. It's threatening to progress. It's threatening to the advancement of civilization. So almost immediately, as soon as the Butler Act is signed into law, the American Civil Liberties Union has a response to that. Okay, they have a response to it because they feel as if that law violates the Constitution, and what would it be violating? Exactly, freedom of speech, that's exactly right. And so they're going to take action, they take immediate action. What they do is they advertise in the paper that they will defend any teacher who is prosecuted under that law. So any teacher that gets arrested for violating the Butler Act, the ACLU is going to provide them with their defense. So that goes in the paper across the country. Everybody is aware of this. Now their ultimate goal, they're not so much interested in the people that are getting arrested for violating this. What do they want to do? What's their ultimate goal?
Change the law.
Exactly, they want to make the law unconstitutional. So really what they're thinking, what the ACLU is doing is they're going to defend anyone that's arrested under this law so that they can appeal it and get it to the Supreme Court. That's the goal, just to get it to the Supreme Court to make the law itself unconstitutional. Yes, to expunge the law completely. That's what they have in mind. But there's some people in this little town in Tennessee, they had a different idea when they saw this offer. Okay, here's an actual photo of Dayton, Tennessee from that time. Okay, and there are some businessmen, some local businessmen, and they read this offer in the newspaper, and they're thinking to themselves, you know, if we could just get somebody to agree to be arrested and have a trial here, it would be great for business. Right? Wouldn't it be great for business? I mean, it would bring, you know, it would bring, yeah, right? It would bring some attention to our little town of Dayton. Now, Dayton is a small little town, and mainly they're farmers. They're farmers, okay? So they would like to, you know, kind of get them on the map, because they're really not on the map. So these guys, they meet in the local drugstore that is actually owned by the president of the school board. All right, so he's bringing some of his businessmen together, and they're trying to figure out, you know, how can we pull this off? Well, you know, you need somebody to be willing to be arrested. All right? So they think they've got a good guy, and the good guy they think they have is this guy. John Thomas Scopes is his name. All right? He's 25 years old, and he's a teacher in the county, and he teaches at this high school. That's a picture of the actual high school. There's only one problem with this, though. Do you know what he teaches?
Probably not sex education.
Any guesses?
Biology.
What?
Biology. Social studies.
He's the football coach. He's the football coach. John Scopes is the football coach. All right, so his job at the high school is to teach football. But now, you know, when you're the coach, occasionally, you may have to fill in. Okay? So you might have to fill in. If somebody is out, you might have to step in. And so John Scopes, and remember, it's the president of the school board, so he happens to know that John Scopes, the football coach, has stepped in on a rare occasion to cover for the biology teacher. Okay? Now this is, I don't know if they use this particular text, but this is a textbook from that time. All right, from 1925, and it was in circulation, it was being used. And in this textbook, guess what it teaches? Human evolution. It teaches human evolution. There is a chapter in there on human evolution. And so Scopes is saying to these guys, to these businessmen, Scopes is saying, I may have, I don't really remember, he's a coach. He just was filling in. He's the substitute teacher, all right? So he's saying, you know, I might have, I might have done that. I might have had them read that. And so that was good enough for the businessmen. That's all they needed. That's all right, we'll take that. Okay, so they're like, so what do you say? What do you say? All you have to do is, you know, admit that you have taught evolution in biology class, all right? Agree to be arrested and perhaps pay a fine of, say, $100. That would be the minimum. And then I just wanted you to know the equivalent of $100. That's from 2022. So that's a lot of money, especially for a school teacher, right? Yes. And so, how enthusiastic do you think this guy was? You just have to be arrested for breaking a law that's very clear, and you could wind up paying a hefty fine. And so Scopes says, okay, I'll do it. Sure, I'll do it. Why would he do that? Why would he do that? But he does. He agrees, all right? He's a 25-year-old young man. He's kind of new in town, and I don't know why, but he agrees to do this. He's regretted it ever since, but he did. So they arrest him. He's arrested on May 5th, 1925. And so now they've got their defendant, right? So the businessmen, to put Dayton on the map, they're off to a good start. They have their defendant. But what does the defendant need?
A lawyer.
A defense lawyer, yes. And these guys, these businessmen, have no idea that somebody, who was going to be somebody very, very, very famous, that heard about this thing and was going to step up and wanted to defend this young man who really has no hope of winning whatsoever. And that defense lawyer is... Yeah, Clarence Darrow. Now, Clarence Darrow was very, very famous at the time. He's famous for taking these impossible cases and for using or utilizing defenses that are way, way out of the ballpark, crazy, crazy stuff. The most famous one was Leopold and Loeb. Do you remember this case?
No.
This was a very, very famous case. These two kids, Leopold and Loeb, they're college kids, okay, from very wealthy families, and they thought that it would be fun to commit the perfect crime, and that they were so intelligent that they could get away with it because certainly they're much smarter than anybody else. They're way smarter than the police and the detectives, and so they could commit this perfect crime and get away with it. Now, the crime that they thought they could get away with was to murder an innocent young boy. They murdered a 14-year-old boy who just trusted them. He just went for a ride with them because he thought they were like cool older guys. and they murdered this boy. And they sent they had already murdered him, and they sent a ransom note to the parents, and the whole time they're thinking that they're going to get away with this, and that they're going to get, they didn't need the money. It was, honestly, this was murder as a fun challenge for them. All right, do these guys have any alternative other than death? What's the sentence going to be for them? The death penalty, yes, yeah, because turns out they're not that clever, and everything they did was discovered, all right? Even they found the typewriter. I know I'm getting into this trial, but Jim, did you have a question? Oh. All right, so Clarence Darrow decides he is going to step in because there's no hope for these two men. They will receive the death penalty. It's automatic. He's going to step in and he's going to defend them. His technique, his tactic, is not to say that they're innocent and try to get them off, because he knows that's not going to happen. What he does is he gets them to plead guilty, and his goal is to get them a life sentence rather than death. So the boys, the men, they're not boys, they're men, they confess to kidnapping and killing this poor little 14-year-old boy. And the way that Darrow defends them is he uses for the very first time psychological profiling. Happens all the time now, right? It had not happened before. Clarence Darrow is the first one to use psychological profiling and has them portrayed, the two men, portrayed as having personality defects that led them to this thinking, to this deviant thinking. And so guess what happens? They got life. He succeeded. He succeeded in what he had intended to do. So that could be his most famous before the Scopes trial. All right, so that's what Clarence Darrow was all about, was the big, huge challenge and overcoming it, and that's what he's famous for. What about the prosecution? I did not mean to do that. I don't know why that happened. So for the prosecution, does anybody know? Who was the prosecutor in this trial?
County attorney, probably.
It was William Jennings Bryan. Okay, William Jennings Bryan. You may be familiar with him. He ran for president 3 times. He made 3 bids for the presidency. And he was known as, I think too, he was the youngest person ever to run for president the first time he ran. And he was an exceptional orator. He was excellent at giving speeches. But the other thing about him in his persuasive speech was that he was an absolute fundamentalist. He was a fundamentalist, and he was a great defender of the Bible being accurate and taken on its word. Okay? And this is a quote from Bryan: "All the ills from which America suffers can be traced to the teaching of" what? Evolution. All right, so now we have the defendant, we have the defense attorney, we have the prosecutor coming in, the prosecution coming in, and they're coming in from the outside. They come in a very elaborate kind of a way. And what the people of Dayton, Tennessee did not know, when these 2 gentlemen arrived in town, guess what they brought? It becomes an absolute circus. It becomes a circus. All right, so the townspeople know that this trial is going to be happening, and everybody comes out. Everyone comes out. All right, this is good versus evil. That's what's on trial. Not whether a teacher taught something that he shouldn't, but this is good versus evil. And then other people had a great sense of humor about it. Do you know that this fellow showed up?
The J. Fred Muggs?
This fella came to the trial every day of the trial. All right, so now if you've got chimpanzees arriving at the trial, then you've also got children that want to go. Parents brought their children.
Oh, dear.
Do you know that toy stores sold out of monkey toys? So everybody had to have a little monkey toy. Here's some of these are actual photos. These are all actual photos from that time. I know, look at him. He came every day. He came every day.
Good thing had like press.
Yes. Well, of course, he's evolved. Right? He's evolved. So he came, he looks very dapper there. So not only do you have adults interested in this, but all the kids came out. This was just a huge deal. All right, so now you need the jury, okay? Now remember, this is a farming town.
And women aren't allowed.
What?
Women aren't allowed to serve, right?
Not yet. Yeah, not yet. Okay, so the jury's going to be made up out of what? Farmers. Is it necessary to have a college education to be a farmer?
No.
Does it even make sense back then to have a college education? All right, so what's happening is now the papers are descending, okay, because you've got Clarence Darrow, you've got William Jennings Bryan there, you've got these, this circus essentially that's happening, so it's being covered, and what the papers are saying is that the farmers are basically uneducated. They might have a little bit of elementary school, and the papers are highlighting the fact that this is a trial about science, and it's being judged by people who have little to no education, and that is being splashed all over the papers, and it's going all throughout the country. We also have the judge. Okay, so Judge Ralston, he's the one that's going to be presiding over this. So it looks like we've got everything we need, right? We've got the defendant, the defense attorney, the prosecution, the judge, the jury. But do you know that they had a couple of other things that really they just did not expect? And what those couple of things are: first, radio broadcast of a trial. Okay? So not only do you have this sensational topic, right? This sensational case with these sensational attorneys going after each other, but it's being broadcast on the radio, and people have not heard this before. This has not happened before.
So you know they're listening.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? And that's not all. That's only one. That's only one of the things that they had in there that was a little bit extra. The other one was film. Film. They had film in the courtroom. Want to see a little bit of that? This is footage from the trial. There's no sound to it. I was going to turn the silence down for you, but
There are no talkies yet.
yeah, kids. There were all the kids were there. Look at everyone was there.
And it's summertime in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Hot.
Wow.
No AC.
All right, so that's footage from the trial. That had not happened before. All of this is just incredible. People are astounded. They're astonished. They've never had a trial recorded and broadcast over radio and been able to see film of it. So what is happening all across the country? Everyone in the country is, yes, everyone is following this trial. Do you think those few businessmen, when they wanted to, get some attention for their little town, do you think that they foresaw anything remotely like what happened? No, I don't think that they did. So look how packed the place is. Look at the courthouse. It is jam-packed. There's women, children, everybody is there. And the Judge Ralston, he opens up the proceedings with what?
Career.
Oh, do you think Darrow had a problem with that? Was that a little biased? A little bit, yeah. So immediately they're battling against one another. Okay, so Brian claims that if evolution wins this trial, Christianity is a goner. Do you think that's true? Or do you think he was just trying to, stir up a little fear? And then Darrow is saying Scopes isn't on trial. Civilization. Do you think these guys are a little dramatic? A little bit dramatic. But they know that who's their audience right now? Yes, they have quite an audience, don't they? All right, so we've seen this. We've seen a few actual photos and some footage. Look how packed that is, right? It's jam-packed. Watch. I want to show you how packed this is. Look at that. That's inside the courthouse.
This was the creation of the anti-curse program.
Oh, I know. Can you imagine what it was like in there?
No.
Now, as Judy said, summertime in Tennessee, it's really, really hot. But guess what, folks? It was unusually hot. It was even hotter than normal, okay? They were experiencing a heat wave. So in the courthouse, in the little town of Dayton, Tennessee, all these people had jammed into this little courtroom, and it's hot. What?
They must be all passing out.
Yeah, they must be all passing up. Well, guess what else is failing?
Water.
On the building.
The floor is collapsing. The floor cannot sustain all of these people. All right. Yes. So now there's too much pressure. It's too heavy, and so they have to take the whole trial, and everybody has to go outside. There's a gazebo in the town, and so they have to take a table and chairs. They have to set up a courtroom, and they have to go outside because the floor of the courtroom is collapsing. All right. So is it true? Is that a sign? Yes. But is it true to say that this becomes a circus? I mean, that's not an exaggeration, is it? No. Look at these are actual photos. This is them outside. This is the outside. Okay. So what? The courtroom's now empty because they're all outside.
Nobody got hurt.
Oh, no one got hurt. No, nobody got hurt. So now they're all outside, okay? And the prosecution is saying that it's public education. We are talking about public education and who pays for public education? Who pays for the building, the upkeep of it, the teachers, all the expenses? Who pays for that? Taxpayers pay for that, right? Okay, so the bottom line, after all of the, the religious speeches and all of that Brian is doing, essentially what his defense is that if the taxpayers of Tennessee are providing the education, they should be able to say what's being taught in the school. That's the argument. Now, I couldn't resist this. Prosecution lasted 7 days before he got to that little technicality about the taxpayers, all right? So it was on the 7th day that the prosecution rested, and I just had to do this because I don't know, I just thought it was I couldn't resist. Okay, so on the 7th day, the prosecution rests. All right, so now it is time for who? Who's up to bat?
The defense.
The defense. And the defense, all right, so Darrow has a strategy. And what he is going to do is he's going to be bringing in all of these experts, okay? Scientists, experts. He's gonna razzle dazzle this jury with all of the scientists there, right? And he's gonna make a big fool out of Brian because Brian's just good at talking, but it's just words. He's gonna show facts, and that's his entire defense is all of the expert testimony. But you remember Judge Ralston, he said no. You cannot bring in any expert witnesses, not a single one. And the reason why he denies the expert testimony is because he said evolution is not on trial here. What we're trying is whether or not Mr. Scopes taught evolution. That's what's on trial. So it doesn't matter what your experts say. Either he did or he didn't, and that's all we have to decide on here. All right? So he denies all of the expert testimony. Now, do you think that a little derailment like that is going to get Clarence Darrow down? No. He comes up with a really great idea. He comes up with a surprise witness. Do you know who his surprise witness is?
Chimpanzee.
Clarence Darrow calls to the stand as his only witness William Jennings Bryan. He calls the prosecutor to the witness stand. That's really that's all he's got left, right? The judge took everybody else away. So he calls the prosecutor to the witness stand, and he says to him, tell me, do you really think that Jonah was swallowed by a big fish? And Brian says, yes, I believe that's possible. I do. I believe that's possible. He says, do you really believe that the sun stood still? Do you really believe that? And Brian says, yes, I believe that that's possible. That could have happened. And he goes on with some other things. Do you really believe Noah got 2 of every animal into an ark? Do you believe that? And every time Brian says, yes, I do believe that. And then, as he's kind of set him up, with some extraordinary, miraculous occurrences from the Bible. Then what he does is he brings up Genesis, and he says, okay, so what you're telling me is anything's possible, and God can do anything. So there is no sun. There's no sun until the 4th day. All right, so God doesn't create the sun and the moon until the 4th day. And Brian says that's correct. Darrow says, so that means for the first 3 days, there was no sun, so the day and the evening might not have been 24 hours. And Brian says, it's possible that before the sun was created, before the sun and the moon was created, that it could have been any length of time, that we don't know how much time. All right, so essentially, Darrow humiliates Brian by forcing him to admit that anything is possible, even with those first 3 days of creation, that maybe millions of years have gone by. And the way that he presented that, Brian had no choice, because he knew what he had said prior to that had been set up for it. That he had to follow through, and he had to say, yes, it's possible that the first 3 days could have been any length of time, including millions of years. Brian is devastated, all right, because he knows that he's been made to look like a what?
Fool.
Yes, he's been made to look like a fool. And remember, who's watching?
The world.
The world is watching. He's not just played for a fool in the little town of Dayton, Tennessee, but this is splashed on the headlines of every newspaper in the country and in Europe, and he's just made to look like a fool. So Darrow's able to do that in 1 day. The whole trial lasts 8 days. The jury goes out and they return a verdict
9 minutes.
in less than 9 minutes. They're right back. They go out and they come right back. And what do you suppose the verdict is? Yes, he is guilty. All right, Scopes, John Scopes is guilty of having taught evolution against the law of the state of Tennessee. And so as soon as that happens, the judge fines Scopes $100. And then that's the end of the trial, right? Can you imagine how much that judge wanted that trial to be over? All right, so he just hurries up and he fines them $100 and gets everybody out of his rickety old court. Can you imagine the damage that was done to that courthouse? All right, so what was the aftermath? What happens? Now, first of all, Brian was really humiliated with this testimony that he gave. And so the court expunges his testimony from the record. Does that matter? Does that help?
Yeah, everybody's sorry.
Everybody, yeah, it was broadcast, remember? All right, so it's on the radio and it's all the newspapers are there, so it doesn't really help. But they did expunge his testimony from the record, from the official record. Do you know that 5 days after the trial ended, William Jennings Bryan died? 5 days after the trial ended, yes, he died. And in Dayton, Tennessee, in that same year, they founded the Bryan College. And this is a college that is dedicated to teaching Christian values.
Surprise.
Surprise, surprise. Okay, remember the ACLU? Yes, so of course they want to appeal this, correct? That was the plan the whole time, right? Because what do they want to do with this law? Yeah, they want to toss it out. They want it to be, they want it declared unconstitutional. Well, it was reversed, but it was reversed on a technicality because remember the judge fined Scopes $100? It's not for the judge. It wasn't a judge trial. It was a jury trial. Who's supposed to set the fine? The jury. So it was tossed out, which means the law is still intact. But the case was overturned, all right? And it does not get ruled unconstitutional until 1967. All right, that was 1925 when they were trying to do it. It doesn't happen until 1967 that the Butler Act was ruled unconstitutional. All right, what happens to Clarence Darrow? Yep, he continues to try cases. He's going to continue to challenge himself. He goes on, all right, and he lives on, all right, and we have a bridge. He doesn't get a university or anything, but he gets a nice bridge in Chicago.
The bridge is very
All right, yeah, a bridge is nice, so he's got a bridge in Chicago. Pat, I can't even believe you're asking that question. Don't you know me by now? Of course I'm going to tell you. Of course I'm going to tell you what happened to John Thomas Scopes. All right, so because he almost got completely lost in this whole thing, right? Like he was just a little pawn off to the side. Like he was practically invisible in the whole thing. So what becomes of him? Well, do you know that he was banned from teaching? He was banned from teaching. He did get married. He had a family. They had to leave the area. Okay? And then he decided he was going to go into politics. He ran for state rep of Kentucky, I think it was, but did not get elected. And then ultimately he went to work for United Oil and Gas. And that's what he did until he died. He was 70 years old when he passed away. So this whole experience for this guy, and I don't know if there's anyone in this room that can explain to me why he ever would have agreed to do this in the first place. I have no idea. Do you know the only one that really made out in this whole ordeal? The little town of Dayton, Tennessee. The little town of Dayton, Tennessee. All right, because they are, to this day, celebrating the fact that this thing happened in their little town. So you arrive in Dayton and you are met with this, all right? This is the location of the Scopes trial. And from that greeting, you can head right on into the museum. The Scopes Trial Museum, all right? Do you know that courthouse? They've preserved it. There it is. They've preserved the courthouse. They did. They had to they had to reinforce that floor. All right. So here's a little bit more of the museum.
in the basement.
Yeah. Right.
Off the courthouse, is that where it is?
Yes. Yes. Okay. And not only that, but if you arrive at the right time of year, not only can you visit the museum, but you could also attend the annual reenactment. Every year they reenact the Scopes trial. Every year. Is that amazing? I think something else needs to happen in the town of Dayton, Tennessee. All right, yes, but yes. I took this from a newspaper, all right, I took this from a newspaper from this year, and they're looking for actors to play the roles for the Scopes Festival. They have a festival every single year. All right, so now I've got a little clip, and it's going to be a synopsis of everything I just told you, because I know you just can't get enough of this footage, right?
of the century. In 1925, biology teacher John Scopes spiraled to fame in the legal battle that became known as the monkey trial. Whether man was descended from the monkey or just making a monkey out of man was fought in a courtroom that challenged the truth of the Darwin theory of evolution. The existence of man in the prehistoric world was denied, for according to the Bible, life began with Adam and Eve. An atmosphere of carnival invaded the sleepy little town of Dayton, Tennessee, as signs and demonstrations ballyhooed the conflict between religion and science. As the world waited, hundreds jammed the courtroom to see if man's intelligence and belief could be controlled by law. The giants of legal oratory, Dudley Field Malone and Clarence Darrow, defended John Scopes' beliefs before the world. It was John Butler's anti-evolutionary law that prohibited the teaching of any theory that denied the story of divine creation. Assistant to the state prosecutor was William Jennings Bryan, who adamantly crusaded against a scientific and atheistic world. Raised in a devout Christian environment, he believed that any education that destroyed the religious faith could not be endured. William Jennings Bryan and Clarence Darrow fought a battle of words. Calico and coveralls packed the courtroom to protect the faith against the foreigners and to find out what this new evolution was all about. On a hot summer's day in the courtroom, Judge Ralston, whose career had never extended beyond the borders of Tennessee, swore in a jury of farmers. The press and public listened with unprecedented interest as the legal brains of both sides dug deeper and deeper into the conflicting theories of man's heritage. In this bitter legal engagement, the defense fought against the inherent belief and faith that challenged the credibility of science. At the return of the indictment against John Scopes, Ralston, a small-town jurist, became the center of world judicial interest. As the Scopes trial continued, Judge Neal, another renowned jurist, was called to bolster the defense counsel of Clarence Darrow and Dudley Field Malone. Few trials in all the history of the American bar held the interest of the nation. The defense listened caustically, and William Jennings Bryan refuted scientific evidence as insidious doctrines, robbing the faithful of their chance for eternal life. In this rare dramatic moment, Clarence Darrow was unable to get this evidence accepted into the record. The result? A verdict of guilty. John Scopes was fined $100. Darwin had lost, and the monkey was on the run. The jury's verdict had removed the fears of man's descendancy from the minds of the people as they returned to a life of virtue and certainty. The monkey trial was a legal carnival to be remembered among the judicial milestones of the century.
Well, that was a little synopsis of everything I just told you. Exactly. Yeah, John's saying there's nothing new under the sun. It's happening all over again. Yes, history just repeats itself, doesn't it? So next week, what we're going to be talking about, it's going to be the final in our series of great trials, and we're going to be going into the Salem witch trial.
Back to Massachusetts.
We have to come back to Massachusetts. Yes, but I thought we would wrap it up with the most infamous trial of all, at least in our area.